Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each week I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another, and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I'm thrilled for this week's guest. Dr. Shaun is with me today. I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are.
First of all, I thank you so much and for the opportunity to share your platform with me. Like I don't take it lightly to share your space digitally, if you will, and I appreciate the invite to have this conversation. My name is Dr. Shaun Woodly. I am a speaker. I am an author. I am an educator, and I am a husband. I'm also a father, and I'm the architect behind the Teach Hustle Inspired movement.
Which, by the way, has one of the coolest logos. I love it, and I love the work you're doing, so I'm pumped to talk today. And, when I have any guest on, Shaun, I always love to start back at the beginning, which is when
Sure.
you were a kid growing up and dreaming what you wanted to be when you got older. Was the path you're on now in that dream at all?
Absolutely not. It was not. Nope. I grew up around music. Music was in everything that me and my family did, especially in the church. So my father was an organist in the church, and I always had the desire to kind of play drums. I would bang on stuff, and I got my opportunity in the sixth grade to play the drums at my church, a very small community church, and I jumped on it and never looked back. And so around sixth grade, I started playing the drums along with my dad there. And at that time in my mind, I was going to go to high school. And then after I graduated high school, I'm going on tour to play drums in somebody's band somewhere. That's what I was going to do. That didn't happen. And so I got some solid advice from a really dope high school teacher that I had, a music theory teacher. I was serious about it. I took band, I was in the show choir, anything music related that allowed me to just learn more about the craft. I was in it. And so my music theory teacher, he said, well, have a backup plan just in case, you're not signed for Bad Boy Records out of
Right,
high school.
right.
And so I said, all right. He said, why don't you study music, but then also study education? Make yourself a little more well-rounded. Best advice I got in high school.
I
And
love
so
that.
I did that, got into my education classes and found it absolutely fascinating. Just the social sciences side behind being an educator and the psychology and the human interaction, loved it. And so, I still continued to play, played in the band in college, played church after I graduated from college at a higher level. So loved that, but really went headfirst into becoming and growing as an educator.
I love that so much. And you've got to do so many other things now since becoming an educator. And you talked about you're a speaker, you've started this Teach Hustle Inspire. And so you go and become an educator, you fall in
Mhm.
love with it. When do you feel kind of led to take it another step?
A couple of different things. In my role as an educator, I kind of gravitated towards leadership. A lot of things that I've done in my life, I've been able to elevate in leadership positions.
Yeah.
And so when I started to get that itch as an educator for leadership, I took a role as a department chair. And so I would sit in the meetings for our building. I would do observations, all of those types of things. And the more I learned about it, the more I said, you know what? I don't think I want to be a principal. That doesn't. I, it's you know what I think and so I went and one year I attended a kind of how they have the open like the convocations, the welcome back to school, and it was at a large venue, a stadium kind of sort of place. It was a large school district. And so I went in there with aspirations to kind of get the year started off just like everybody else. And the speaker there, I left out of there so on fire. I left out of there so charged and motivated. And I had the best year. I had the best year from that one experience. And I
Wow.
said, wow. I said, look at that. I said, if I could leave here having been charged and fired up and just I hit the ground running. I went and enrolled in a PhD program. I was fired up, Todd. I'm not even lying to you. And so I said, that's it for me. I said, what would it feel like for me to have that impact? And so that is where I went and shifted my trajectory a little bit, because I was having at that time success in the classroom,
Right.
but there were so many other educators down the hall from me, let alone down the street or in other parts of the community or other states that were struggling. So I said, how can I have a larger impact and help those with what I figured out, but continue to grow? And so I dove headfirst, just like I dove headfirst into becoming an educator. I dove headfirst into becoming a researcher and a student of other educators so that I can go and help other educators. And that's kind of where my story got started at that level.
And I love hearing that progression, because, I love that whether it is you becoming an educator or you taking another step and start to speak and share your wisdom and things, there's always a person who kind of instigated that want in your heart, or that led you there. And one thing that I think about often is, you being an educator is one thing. But when you begin to put yourself out there on social media, whenever you begin to speak and do different things like that, what I find often is this idea of doubt can quickly come in and take root in our lives, where we begin to compare ourselves to other speakers or other influencers or other people on social media doing anything. And so for you and your own journey, what do you do to keep doubt at bay so it doesn't take root?
I have to understand doubt, first of all, because doubt, I've come to understand doubt is like a salesman. Like, we think that car salesmen are sneaky and slimy. We think that when you go into a store and someone is trying to hustle, like, I have this innate, I don't want anybody to try and hustle me out of my money or anything like that. So I'm always on guard with those types of things. So like, I understand that doubt is in the business of trying to take over my self-talk. And so I have to recognize that. But then also I've come to understand several things about myself. If I do too much investigating into something, I'll talk myself out of it and get into a state of analysis by paralysis by analysis. And so sometimes I found just go and worry about it later. And in many of the instances with things that I've done to become where I am, a lot of times I'm jumping off of the side of the cliff and building the plane on the way down, literally. And some things have worked, many things have not. Like, a lot of times people say, wow, I see you're doing this. This is really cool. And I'm like, you have no idea what I did to get here, how often I failed, how often things did not work for me to get here. But I'm so fueled and motivated because I see that when you can have an impact on someone, I've lived it. When someone can influence you to want to literally enroll in a doggone PhD program, like, I've been on the other end of that experience. So I've had to teach myself to understand that there's a lot that you have to peel back, a lot of layers that you have to begin to understand, because now I'm stepping outside of the role of an educator. You know this. I'm stepping into entrepreneurship, which is we were never taught that.
No,
I can teach circles around the classroom, but entrepreneurship is different. So there are a lot of different things that I had to learn. But again, I'm fueled because I've seen the results. So that, as a bit of an end point, if you will, or a certain marker of mastery, fuels me to continue to go and not be so concerned about doubt and failure. Does it with me sometimes? Absolutely. But sometimes I don't give it the chance to, because I just put myself out there and worry about it later.
Well, one of the things you said there, though, that really resonated with me was the whole idea of, people see the success that we bring, but they don't see the failure that far surpasses any success that we found. Because I've often found in conversation people, one of the main questions people ask me on the side is, how did you do it? Like, how did you get a social media following? How did you get recognized for this? How did you write a book? And for me, I don't know the answer. Like, oftentimes I go, things just happen because I don't think. Like, I just jump into stuff. I'm like, "Ooh, this is awesome." And I follow my heart. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's what, when you said, one thing I don't know anything about is entrepreneurship. And I could completely agree with that, because I don't know how to give people advice other than do what you love. If you don't
Yeah.
love doing it, it's never going to take off, because people can see right through a snake oil salesman. Well, most
Yep.
people can see
Yeah.
right through a snake oil salesman. And so, I think about your work, and like I said at the top of the show, I love your logo. So I've got to
Oh,
know,
thanks.
did you design it, or did you have somebody design it for you?
I designed it myself. I
And where did
did.
the idea come from? Like, were you just tinkering around one day and it happened, or how'd that come about?
I've been asked that question, and the best way to describe it, because this isn't kind of like the first logo or brand, if you will, that I've come up with. Um, but what stuck out, the way that this kind of formed, is if you're familiar with the process of bamboo, the way it grows, and I'm going to make this all make sense in just 2 seconds. But like bamboo, when you plant it, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be making this up, but the analogy still works. Before it grows, it takes 5 years. But once that 5 year mark hits, it grows really, really fast and really, really strong. So, what does that mean? So, all of what came to be, what people see now as Teach, Hustle, Inspire, I've been working on in some way, shape, or form, studying. And this is what we didn't know about before. We're not taught this. Studying brand design, studying marketing, studying what resonates with people, even down to colors. Like, I studied those things and see what resonates with people, what doesn't. Moreover, I chose the words very intentionally. Like, it's not just three random words I just picked out of a hat. Like, they each have meaning. The Teach is about unlock intellectual treasure. That's our objective every single day. And the hustle kind of, that brings my hip hop roots into it, because it's about how we can't stop and won't stop growing and learning as educators. And the Inspire, because we're in this thankless profession. It's spreading love and light. We have to spread love and light to one another. We have to spread love and light to our families and our students. So this is a culmination of all of those things that I've in invested time in and invested brain power in for a number of years. And then it's just like, boom, the bamboo. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Did it land?
Totally. I understood it. Now, well, the listeners, I assume so, because it was easy for me to follow. But
Okay,
yes,
okay, cool.
I love that analogy too. And I really hope that's true about bamboo, what you just said, because that is a
I'm gonna say it is.
brilliant comparison. And I love that idea and thinking about that. And that really is that's how we grow. You don't see a lot the first couple of years, but once you
Mm-hmm.
get everything in place and figure out what you're doing, it
Yeah.
shoots off. And
Yep.
so I love that. Well, Shaun, switching gears just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, I want to ask, there's a lot happening in our world today, and
Mm-hmm.
no matter when people are going to listen to this episode, I know that they're going to remember all that 2020 brought and brings, and that's a pandemic, that's social unrest, that's racial inequities brought to the forefront, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Being a man of color yourself in a world dominated by, the field of education is dominated by women or people
Mm-hmm.
who are white, and all the work that you're doing, I have to ask, just on a personal level, how
Mm-hmm.
are you holding up in the midst of all of this, and how do you maintain hope despite what was just brought to the forefront for so many other people?
That's an interesting question. I appreciate the question first and foremost. It's been an interesting journey, I will say, because there are several layers to that. On a personal note, it's been up and down for me.
Mhm.
With COVID being something that has impacted my family personally, and then knowing all others, I want to say it's a safe assumption that at least most of us know someone or know someone that knows someone has been directly affected by this. Um, so that, combined with just everything that has happened, I mean, going back to January, Todd, I never in a million years would I think thought that Kobe Bryant's death would have affected me the way that it did. And even sitting here now, I still have trouble articulating why it did so much, but it did. And me and my friends, and I remember we were sitting here. We had some friends in town. This is pre-pandemic, before COVID really got bad, and we were all sitting here. I want to say it was a Sunday afternoon, and it just like it changed the entire mood, the day, and everything going forward. And it was just like it was emotional turmoil for weeks after that. Then we go into the pandemic. Then we have continued social justice issues, because with everything from Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and so many others, these have been kind of some of the things that have, what's the word that I want to use here, been at the forefront of media. But being a man of color, this has been something I've lived my entire life. Going back to when my mom would have to tell me, and I didn't understand why at the time, but as being young as, primary school, when you go into that store, if I'm going to the corner store or something like that, if I'm going into 7-Eleven, don't come out of there without a bag. Don't come out of there without a receipt. I don't care if the guy at the counter told you it's okay. No, you need your receipt. You need a bag, both of them. As an adult, as someone who's gone through that and seen the results that can happen when you don't have those things, and see how you can be perceived just by the way you look, it is extremely traumatizing. You saw my son there in the background, fooling around in the back window there, but trying to process how I have to have these similar conversations with him 35 years later. So it's a lot to deal with, Todd, and it is something that I still haven't figured out all the answers to. My escape from it, if you will, is to try and see what I can do to make at least someone's world in the classroom a little bit better. A lot of this boils down to education that is not serving everyone. And I feel that if I can help prepare the teachers who are teaching the students and the people of our future, then I can contribute to helping to solve this problem. Does that make sense?
No, you said a couple of things there that really resonated with me, and I'll work backwards. The first one was, just that idea of what you just read right there. I am such a firm believer as well that the best way that we can maintain hope and sanity is by pouring into others. And I've talked many times about how there's so much research proof that when you show even just gratitude to others, it actually increases your mood more than theirs. And so when you said that resonated with me. I've heard many stories as I've had these conversations about different things that people have been raised with, and things they were told that I myself, with the privilege and that I have been afforded due to the color of my skin and my gender and my social upbringing and all that kind of stuff. And the one you just shared there, I had never heard before. And it was just a powerful, when you were sharing that, it just hit me. And then the other thing that I think that you said that really resonated was, I feel like, we lose people every year, and every loss is felt in different ways. But the losses we've felt this year, I feel like through Judge Ginsburg, through Kobe Bryant, through Chadwick Boseman, like those kinds of people who did so much. And I think the reason why those people really resonate with me, it goes back to my first point that I shared that you said that stuck out with me, was those people spent so much of their career and life pouring into others and trying to make things better for others. And I think that for me, because I won't speak for you, but I think for me, that's why those 3 deaths this year, I haven't felt celebrity deaths like I have with those 3. And as I reflect, I just feel like they hold a mindset that I want to emulate.
Yeah.
No matter what kind of recognition I get, no matter what my platform is, no matter where the money is, that my life isn't about that. It's about
Hmm.
fixing things, helping people, pouring into others. And so hearing you share that just really, I don't know, it hit me. So,
Yeah.
so thank you for that vulnerability, but also that honesty in sharing that answer.
Problem.
Shaun, as we wrap this up, one question that I always love to end these conversations with is, I feel like as people, there are so many things we hold close to our hearts and to who we are. And so for people listening or watching today, if they were to walk away with one thing, what would your one thing be for them?
Continue to do what you can to spread love and light.
Mhm.
Tying back to what we just talked about, because like of these three, the teach, the hustle, and inspire, that inspire resonates, I feel, with a lot of people, because that can serve, it can tie so many loose ends. It can really fill so many wells.
Mhm.
We as educators, we are givers by nature and profession, often to a fault. We
Yeah.
give and we give and we give. And especially a lot of the teachers that I work with and a lot of the schools, they serve in urban and culturally diverse communities. And there's a lot of struggle. And so we give to the point of depletion, and in the classroom, let alone, we haven't even gotten home yet. We have nothing left sometimes, or very little, for ourselves and our families. That spreading love and light with being intentional about it, that gratitude with affirmations, with taking time to fill your well so that you can fill the well of others.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if you think about, and this is going in a completely different topic, but it's relevant, symptoms and doing some of the research behind anxiety and depression, a lot of times that can be traced, and I'm speaking at a high level here, but
Mhm.
it can
Right.
be traced to lack of connection. So how are we connecting with others on an emotional level, on a spiritual level? How are we
Mhm.
connecting with the work that we do? We're all invested, but sometimes we spin our wheels because we're trying things, or we're not trying things because we haven't seen success. So, it really, how can we reestablish that connection that we originally went into that classroom for? How can we continue to really put ourselves in a position where we are, again, pouring into our well so that we have some water to give? Like, that
Yeah.
spreading love and light is essential, because that light, that candle, when that candle lights another candle, that flame doesn't go out. That
Mhm.
flame spreads.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna leave you with that right there.
I love that. Well, I had told you before we started that I have been looking forward to this conversation because I love your work so much. And so I
Thank
just
you.
want to say thank you so much for coming and sharing a little bit of your story today on my podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Loved the conversation. Todd, keep doing what you're doing. I'm a fan, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out all the past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your stuff, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Shaun has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.